She gave up on love as a single mom, until a billionaire chose her broken heart as his forever. They called me a gold digger in a magazine, so I handed them the shovel and helped them bury me. Walked away from a man who saw me as enough, from a contract I'd earned on merit, from a future that terrified me because it looked too much like hope. I survived abandonment, poverty, and single motherhood. But I almost didn't survive someone loving me so completely that it forced me to believe I was actually worth loving. Close your eyes for just a moment. Think about the last time a story made you feel something real. Made your heart race. Made tears fall without permission. Made you remember why being human is so beautifully complicated. That's what we do here at CJ Stories. Whether you're returning or just discovering us, welcome home. This is your safe space for tears, laughter, hope, and everything in between. Today's story will take you somewhere unexpected. It'll make you think. It'll make you feel. And I promise you, you won't see the ending coming. But here's the thing, the magic only works if you stay till the very end. No skipping. No rushing. Just you, me, and a story that might just change how you see the world. If it moves you, let me know you're here, subscribe, like, and share this with someone whose heart needs touching today. Ready? Let's step into today's story. Victoria Hall had exactly $43 in her checking account when her daughter asked for ballet lessons. It was June 8, 2024, a Saturday morning in Charleston, and the humidity was already making Victoria's natural curls stick to the back of her neck as she crouched down to Zoe's eye level in the kitchen of their small apartment. Her daughter, 5 years old with the same warm brown skin and bright eyes Victoria saw in the mirror every morning, held a crumpled flyer in her small hands. "Miss Andrea says I have good posture," Zoe said, her voice carrying that particular hope only children could manage. "She says I could be really good at it." Victoria's heart did what it always did in these moments. It broke a little, then pieced itself back together with determination. She was 34 years old, had been raising Zoe on her own for the past 4 years, and she'd gotten very good at creative budgeting. Ballet lessons, though. That was $200 a month she simply didn't have. "Let me look into it, baby," Victoria said, smoothing down one of Zoe's braids. "Maybe they have a payment plan or something." Zoe's face lit up the way only a 5-year-old's could, complete and unconditional trust shining through. "Thank you, Mama." Victoria stood, her knees protesting slightly. She was a photographer, which meant she spent a lot of time crouching, kneeling, and contorting herself into strange positions to get the perfect shot. Her business was growing, slowly but steadily. She'd built it from nothing 3 years ago, working her way up from taking headshots in a rented studio space to booking small weddings and family sessions. But growing didn't mean profitable yet. Not profitable enough for ballet lessons, anyway. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A text from her mother. "How's my grandbaby? You two coming for Sunday dinner tomorrow?" Victoria smiled despite the tightness in her chest. Her mom, Patricia, had been her rock through everything. The unexpected pregnancy, the relationship that fell apart when Zoe was barely a year old, the struggle to build something of her own while raising a child. But Victoria had learned not to lean too hard, even on the people who loved her most. You had to stand on your own 2 feet eventually. She was typing a response when her business email notification chimed. Her heart jumped the way it always did. Every new email could be a booking, and every booking meant keeping the lights on for another month. The email was from someone named Margaret Chen, personal assistant to Christopher Williams. The message was brief and professional. Mr. Williams was seeking a photographer for a corporate event on June 15 at the Charleston Harbor Resort. High-profile attendees. Excellent compensation. Was she available? Victoria read it 3 times. She'd heard of Christopher Williams. Everyone in Charleston had. He was the billionaire who'd taken his father's modest real estate company and turned it into an empire that stretched up and down the East Coast. He was 37, reclusive, and according to the occasional Society page article her friend Simone liked to forward her, devastatingly handsome in that quiet, serious way some men carried themselves. She'd never photographed anything in his world before. Corporate events weren't really her specialty, but the number Margaret quoted was more than Victoria usually made in 2 months. Her fingers were typing a response before she fully thought it through. "Yes, I'm available. Happy to discuss details at your convenience." The reply came back in less than 5 minutes with a meeting time. Monday, 2 p.m., at Williams Development Group headquarters downtown. Victoria looked at Zoe, who was now sprawling on their worn couch with a picture book, and felt something shift in her chest. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was the break she'd been working toward. She let herself hope, just a little. Monday afternoon found Victoria standing in front of a gleaming glass building on Meeting Street, her portfolio bag slung over her shoulder and her best dress smoothed down for the 3rd time. The Williams Development Group occupied the top 5 floors, and the lobby alone was more elegant than anywhere she'd ever worked. The elevator moved so smoothly she barely felt it. When the doors opened on the 23rd floor, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and perfect posture greeted her. "Ms. Hall? I'm Margaret Chen. Thank you so much for coming." Victoria shook her hand, trying to project confidence she didn't quite feel. "Thank you for reaching out. I'm excited to hear more about the event." Margaret led her through a space that was all clean lines and understated luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Charleston Harbor, and Victoria's photographer's eye immediately began cataloging angles and light quality. They passed several offices and a conference room before stopping at a door at the end of the hall. "Mr. Williams wanted to meet you personally," Margaret said. "He's very particular about the people he works with." Before Victoria could process that, Margaret knocked twice and opened the door. The office was enormous, but it was the man standing by the window who pulled all of Victoria's attention. Christopher Williams was tall, easily over 6 feet, with dark hair that looked like he'd run his hands through it a few times and hadn't bothered to smooth it back down. He wore a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows and dark slacks that probably cost more than her rent. When he turned, his eyes were a striking blue-gray, and there was something in his face that surprised her. He looked tired. Not physically, but in some deeper way she recognized because she'd seen it in her own mirror often enough. "Ms. Hall," he said, and his voice was quieter than she'd expected. Measured. "Thank you for coming." He crossed the space and extended his hand. When she took it, his grip was firm but brief, and she caught the faint scent of expensive cologne mixed with coffee. "Mr. Williams. It's good to meet you. Christopher, please." He gestured to a seating area near the windows. "Can Margaret get you anything? Coffee? Water?" "I'm fine, thank you." They sat, and Margaret excused herself with a promise to bring the event details. For a moment, there was silence. Christopher looked at her with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable but somehow wasn't. It felt more like he was trying to figure something out. "I looked at your website," he said finally. "Your work is exceptional. You have a way of capturing people that feels honest. Not performative." Victoria blinked. She hadn't expected him to actually look at her work personally. "Thank you. That means a lot. I try to find the real moments, not just the posed ones. The wedding gallery, the one from April." He leaned forward slightly. "There's a photo of an elderly couple dancing. Everyone else is watching them, but you caught this look between them. Like they were the only 2 people in the world." She remembered that shot. Remembered the way her chest had ached taking it because it was so beautiful it almost hurt. They'd been married 62 years. The bride was their granddaughter. "That's the kind of thing I want for this event," Christopher said. "Not the stiff corporate shots where everyone looks like they'd rather be anywhere else. I want the real moments. The connections." Victoria studied him. This wasn't what she'd expected from a billionaire CEO. There was something almost vulnerable in the way he talked about capturing connection, like it was something rare and worth protecting. "I can do that," she said. "But I'll need to understand the event. Who's attending, what the purpose is, what kind of story you want told." The corner of his mouth lifted, not quite a smile but close. "Direct. I appreciate that." Margaret returned with a thick folder of details, and for the next 30 minutes, they discussed logistics. It was a charity gala, raising money for housing initiatives in underserved Charleston communities. High-profile donors, local politicians, business leaders. Christopher wanted documentation, yes, but more than that, he wanted to show the human side of the work his foundation was doing. Victoria took notes, asked questions, and felt her excitement building. This was exactly the kind of project that could elevate her portfolio, open doors she'd been knocking on for years. When they finished, Christopher stood and walked her to the door himself, which seemed to surprise Margaret. "I'll have contracts sent over today," he said. "But I want to be clear about something." Victoria paused, her hand on her portfolio bag. "I don't work with people I don't trust," Christopher continued. "And I don't trust easily. But there's something about your work, the way you see people, that tells me you understand what matters. So I'm trusting you with this." The weight of his words settled over her shoulders, but it didn't feel heavy. It felt like respect, like he was seeing her as an equal despite the vast difference in their bank accounts and social circles. "I won't let you down," Victoria said, and meant it completely. His eyes held hers for a moment longer than strictly necessary. "I don't think you will." When she left the building, stepping back out into the humid Charleston afternoon, Victoria felt like she was walking on air. She called her mom from the car. "Mama, you will not believe what just happened." Patricia's warm laugh filled the line. "Tell me everything, baby." As Victoria recounted the meeting, leaving out the strange flutter she'd felt when Christopher Williams looked at her like he was seeing something in her worth trusting. She let herself feel proud. She'd done this. Built something from nothing, and now she was getting recognized for it. "This is wonderful," Patricia said. "See? I told you your hard work would pay off. It's one event, Ma. Let's not get ahead of ourselves." "One event with Charleston's most eligible billionaire," her mother said, and Victoria could hear the smile in her voice. "Who knows what might happen? It's a job, Mama. A really good job that's going to help me keep the lights on and maybe, just maybe, get Zoe those ballet lessons she wants." Sure. Just a job." Victoria rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. "I'm hanging up now. Love you, baby. Proud of you. Love you too." The week leading up to the gala passed in a blur of preparation. Victoria scouted the venue, planned her equipment setup, and created shot lists. She was professional, thorough, and completely in control. What she wasn't prepared for was how often her thoughts drifted back to that office, to blue-gray eyes and a quiet voice talking about capturing real moments like they were precious things. She told herself it didn't mean anything. Told herself she was just excited about the opportunity. But on the night of June 15, 2024, when she arrived at the Charleston Harbor Resort with her cameras and found Christopher Williams waiting in the lobby to personally show her around the space, she felt that flutter again, stronger this time. "I thought you'd want to see the layout before guests arrive," he said. "Make sure you have everything you need." He was in a tuxedo now, perfectly tailored, but he still had that slightly rumpled quality, like formality didn't quite suit him. As he walked her through the ballroom, pointing out where different speakers would be, where the auction items were displayed, Victoria found herself watching him more than the space. He cared about this. Really cared. Not in the performative way of someone doing charity for tax breaks, but in the way of someone who'd seen suffering and wanted to do something about it. "Can I ask you something?" Victoria said as they paused near the windows overlooking the harbor. "Of course. Why housing? Specifically. There are a lot of causes someone in your position could support." Christopher was quiet for a moment, his gaze distant. "My father grew up in public housing. Did well for himself eventually, built the business. But he never forgot where he came from. When he died 5 years ago, one of the last things he said to me was that money meant nothing if you didn't use it to give other people the same chances you had." The rawness in his voice caught her off guard. This wasn't rehearsed or polished. This was real grief, real love, still present even years later. "He sounds like he was a good man," Victoria said softly. "He was the best man I've ever known." Christopher looked at her then, and something in his expression made her breath catch. "I'm trying to live up to that. Some days I'm not sure I'm succeeding." Without thinking, Victoria said, "I think you're doing better than you give yourself credit for." The look he gave her then was so full of surprise and something else, something warmer, that she had to look away first. Her heart was beating too fast, and this was ridiculous. She was here to work, not to have feelings about her client's vulnerability. "I should let you finish setting up," Christopher said, but he didn't move immediately. "Yeah. Guests will be arriving soon." He nodded, then seemed to hesitate. "Victoria, after this is over, if the photos turn out the way I think they will, I'd like to discuss more work. Ongoing documentation of the Foundation's projects. But more than that, I'd like to, maybe we could, I'd enjoy continuing our conversation. About photography. Or other things." He was nervous. Christopher Williams, Billionaire CEO, was nervous asking her to talk to him again. Victoria felt a smile spread across her face before she could stop it. "I'd like that too." The gala was perfect. Victoria moved through the crowd invisible and essential all at once, capturing moments of joy, generosity, and connection. She photographed donors writing checks, community leaders sharing stories, children from the housing programs laughing with their families. And she photographed Christopher, though he probably didn't realize how often. Christopher listening intently to an elderly woman's story. Christopher kneeling down to talk to a shy child. Christopher's face when the final donation total was announced, relief and hope mixing into something beautiful. When the last guest left and the venue began to empty, Victoria was packing her equipment when she felt someone approach. "How did it go?" Christopher asked. He'd loosened his bow tie, and there was champagne on his breath, just faintly. "Really well. I got some beautiful shots. You're going to love them." "I'm sure I will." He paused. "Are you hungry?" "I haven't eaten anything since this morning." Victoria glanced at her watch. It was nearly 11. She should go home, relieve her mother from babysitting duty, upload these files and get some sleep. Instead, she heard herself say, "Starving, actually." His smile transformed his whole face. "I know a place." Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more emotional and heart-touching stories that speak to the soul, and share your thoughts in the comments to tell us which story you want to hear next. Now let us continue. The place Christopher knew turned out to be a 24-hour diner on the edge of downtown Charleston, the kind with cracked vinyl booths and a waitress who called everyone honey. Victoria slid into the booth across from him and couldn't help but smile at the contrast. A billionaire in a tuxedo, slightly rumpled now, sitting under fluorescent lights studying a laminated menu like it held the secrets of the universe. "I haven't been here in months," Christopher said, not looking up. "But their blueberry pancakes are incredible, and I've been thinking about them all night." "Pancakes at 11 p.m., Victoria said. "That's very specific. Best time for pancakes. No judgment, no rules." He finally looked up, and his eyes caught the diner lights in a way that made them seem lighter, almost silver. "Order whatever you want. This is my thank you for making tonight work so well." The waitress appeared, poured coffee without asking, and took their orders with efficient disinterest. When she left, Christopher wrapped his hands around his mug and leaned back against the booth. "Tell me about your daughter," he said. Victoria's eyebrows rose. "How did you know I have a daughter?" "Margaret does thorough background checks on everyone I work with. It's not personal, just protocol." He had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "But also, you have a photo on your website. In the About section. You're holding a little girl, and you both have the same smile." Victoria pulled out her phone and showed him her lock screen. Zoe, grinning with 2 missing front teeth, covered in paint from an art project that had gotten enthusiastically out of hand. "That's Zoe. She's 5. Loud, creative, obsessed with every animal she's ever seen, and currently convinced she needs ballet lessons." Christopher studied the photo with genuine interest. "She looks like you. Same eyes. Poor thing got stuck with my stubborn streak too, according to my mother." "Stubbornness is underrated," Christopher said. "My father used to say the only difference between stubborn and determined is whether you succeed or not." Their food arrived, and for a few minutes they ate in comfortable silence. Victoria couldn't remember the last time she'd sat across from a man and felt this at ease. There was no performance here, no trying to impress or manage expectations. Just 2 tired people eating pancakes and enjoying the quiet. "Can I ask you something?" Christopher said, pouring more syrup with the focus of someone performing surgery. "And you can absolutely tell me it's none of my business." "Go ahead. You're raising Zoe on your own?" Victoria set down her fork, but there was no defensiveness in the gesture. She'd answered this question enough times to know when someone was being genuinely curious versus judgmental. "Her father and I split when she was almost a year old. He's not really in the picture anymore. Sends a birthday card sometimes, pays child support when he remembers. It's fine. We're fine. Better than fine, actually. We have a good life, just the 2 of us and my mom." Christopher nodded slowly. "That must be hard sometimes. Doing it alone." "It is," Victoria admitted. "But I've learned that asking for help doesn't mean you're not strong enough. It just means you're smart enough to know you can't do everything by yourself. My mom watches Zoe when I have evening shoots. My friend Simone picks her up from kindergarten on Thursdays when I have that standing client meeting. We make it work." Something shifted in Christopher's expression, like he was filing that information away for reasons she couldn't quite read. "What about you?" Victoria asked. "Margaret mentioned you took over the business after your father passed. That must have been overwhelming." "It was terrifying," Christopher said simply. "I was 32, had been working in the company for years, but I'd always assumed I'd have more time to learn from him. And then suddenly I didn't, and there were 200 employees depending on me to not destroy everything he'd built." "But you didn't. Destroy it, I mean. From what I've read, you've grown the company significantly. Numbers on a spreadsheet." He pushed his half-eaten pancakes around his plate. "Some days I wonder if I'm building the right things. My father cared about people first, profit second. I try to do the same, but the industry makes it easy to lose sight of that." Victoria thought about the way he'd interacted with people at the gala. The genuine attention he'd given to every conversation, even when he was clearly exhausted. "I think you're doing exactly what he would have wanted." Christopher looked at her then, really looked at her, and Victoria felt heat rise in her chest that had nothing to do with the coffee. "You're very easy to talk to," he said quietly. "I don't usually do this. Sit in diners at midnight telling strangers about my doubts." "We're not strangers anymore," Victoria pointed out. "We're pancake friends. That's at least a step up." His laugh was surprised and genuine, and Victoria decided she liked the sound of it very much. By the time they left the diner, it was nearly 1 in the morning. Christopher walked her to her car, hands in his pockets, and Victoria was acutely aware of how empty the parking lot was, how close he was standing, how much she didn't want the night to end. "I meant what I said earlier," Christopher told her. "About more work. I'd like to hire you to document the Foundation's projects. We're breaking ground on a new development in North Charleston next month, and there will be ongoing work after that. Family move-ins, community events. If you're interested. Victoria's heart jumped. Ongoing work meant steady income. Steady income meant security, meant ballet lessons, meant breathing room she hadn't had in years. I'm very interested, she said. Send me the details and we'll work something out. Good. He smiled, and it transformed his whole face again, made him look younger and less burdened. And the other thing I said? About continuing our conversation. I meant that too. So did I. They stood there for a moment, and Victoria wondered if he was going to kiss her. Wondered if she wanted him to. But Christopher just reached out and squeezed her hand briefly, a touch that was somehow more intimate than anything else could have been. Drive safe, Victoria. You too, Christopher. She watched him walk to his own car, a sleek black sedan that probably cost more than her entire apartment building, and felt something dangerous blooming in her chest. Hope, maybe. Or possibility. Either way, it was terrifying and wonderful all at once. 2 weeks later, on a humid Saturday afternoon in late June, Victoria found herself at Waterfront Park with her camera, photographing a family reunion. Zoe was with her mom for the day, and Victoria was trying not to think about the text message Christopher had sent that morning. Coffee sometime this week? I promise better coffee than the diner, though the company probably won't be as good. She'd read it 17 times, analyzing every word like a teenager with her first crush. Which was ridiculous. She was 34 years old, a mother, a business owner. She didn't have time for crushes. Except apparently she did, because her stomach flipped every time her phone buzzed, hoping it was him again. The family session wrapped up just after 4, and Victoria was reviewing shots on her camera when a familiar voice said, "Is this a private photo shoot or can anyone watch?" She turned to find Christopher standing a few feet away, dressed casually in jeans and a gray t-shirt that did very good things for his shoulders. He looked different like this, less polished and more approachable, and Victoria's heart did that annoying flutter thing again. "Christopher. Hi. What are you doing here?" "I live a few blocks away," he said, gesturing vaguely toward the historic district. "I come here sometimes when I need to think. Clear my head. What about you?" "Just finished a session." She held up her camera. "Family reunion. 3 generations, lots of love, slightly chaotic but in the best way. Can I see?" She hesitated, then turned the camera so he could view the screen. He leaned in close enough that she could smell his cologne, something woodsy and clean, and scrolled through the last few shots with careful attention. "These are wonderful," he said. "You have this way of capturing joy that feels effortless. Like you're not even trying, it just happens." "It's not effortless," Victoria admitted. "I'm just good at knowing when to be invisible and when to direct. People relax when they forget I'm there." Christopher handed back the camera, but he didn't step away. "I'm glad I ran into you. I was going to wait until you responded to my text, but since you're here, I'll just ask in person. Have dinner with me. Tonight, if you're free. Or any night this week. Or any night at all, really." He was rambling slightly, and it was endearing in a way that made Victoria want to smile and also maybe kiss him, which was a problem because they were standing in a public park and she was supposed to be professional. "I'm free tonight," she heard herself say. "But I need to pick up Zoe from my mom's by 8. Then we'll have an early dinner," Christopher said immediately. "There's a place on Rainbow Row that does incredible seafood. Casual, family-friendly. We could pick up Zoe and bring her with us if you want." Victoria blinked. In her limited experience with dating as a single mom, men generally ran the other direction when her daughter entered the conversation. But Christopher was standing there looking completely sincere, like having a 5-year-old join their dinner was the most natural thing in the world. "You don't have to do that," she said carefully. "I know a kid wasn't part of the dinner invitation." "Victoria." Christopher's voice was gentle but firm. "You're a package deal. I understand that. And honestly, I'd like to meet her. If that's okay with you." The dangerous hope in her chest bloomed wider, and Victoria made a decision. Maybe it was too fast, maybe it was reckless, but she was so tired of protecting herself from every possible disappointment. "Okay," she said. "Let's do it. But I'm warning you, she's going to ask you approximately 800 questions, and at least half of them will be about whether you've ever seen a dolphin." Christopher's smile was bright enough to rival the June sunshine. "I'll prepare my dolphin facts immediately." They picked up Zoe at 6, and Victoria watched carefully as her daughter met Christopher for the first time. Zoe was shy for approximately 30 seconds before launching into a detailed explanation of the drawing she'd made at Grandma's house, which involved a princess, a dragon, and a surprising amount of glitter. Christopher listened with complete attention, asking questions and admiring the artwork like it belonged in a museum. When Zoe demanded to know if he'd ever seen a real dolphin, he didn't hesitate. I have, actually. There's a pod that comes through the harbor sometimes. Maybe we could go look for them one day, if your mom says it's okay. Zoe's eyes went wide. Mama, can we? Please? Victoria met Christopher's gaze over her daughter's head, and something passed between them. Understanding, maybe. Or promise. We'll see, baby. Dinner was chaos in the best possible way. Zoe knocked over her water glass, insisted on sitting between them so she could talk to Christopher more easily, and fell asleep with her head on Victoria's shoulder before dessert arrived. Christopher flagged down their server and had her cheesecake boxed up without being asked, then helped carry Zoe to the car when it was time to leave. Thank you for tonight, Victoria said as she buckled her daughter into the car seat. You were really good with her. She's a great kid, Christopher said, and he meant it. Smart, creative, full of life. Like her mom. Victoria straightened and found herself standing very close to him in the narrow space between their cars. The sun had set, and the historic street was lit with gas lamps that cast everything in warm, golden light. Christopher, she started, not sure what she wanted to say. I really want to kiss you right now, he said quietly. But your daughter is right there, and I don't want to presume, and I'm probably completely misreading this entire situation. Victoria reached out and took his hand, threading her fingers through his. You're not misreading anything. No. She squeezed his hand. But you're right about Zoe being right there. And I don't introduce her to people I'm dating unless I'm sure it's going somewhere. So maybe we should figure out if this is going somewhere before we complicate things. Christopher's thumb brushed across her knuckles, a touch so gentle it made her shiver despite the summer heat. I'd like it to go somewhere. If you would. I would, Victoria said. But I need you to understand something. I have a whole life already. A daughter, a business, responsibilities. I can't just drop everything for spontaneous dates or late-night calls. And if this is going to work, I need someone who understands that my priority is always going to be Zoe. I wouldn't want you to be anyone other than who you are, Christopher said. And honestly, watching you with her tonight, seeing how much you love her and how hard you work to give her a good life, it just makes me admire you more. The sincerity in his voice undid something in Victoria's chest, some protective wall she'd built brick by careful brick over the past 4 years. Okay then, she said softly. Let's see where this goes. Christopher lifted her hand and pressed a kiss to her knuckles, his lips warm and soft against her skin. I'll call you tomorrow. I'll answer. As she drove home with Zoe sleeping peacefully in the back seat, Victoria let herself smile. Really smile, the kind that came from somewhere deep and hopeful. She'd spent so long believing that romance was something that happened to other people, people without responsibilities and complications. But maybe she'd been wrong. Maybe there was room in her life for this after all. Her phone buzzed at a red light. A text from Christopher. Thank you for tonight. Both of you. Sleep well. Victoria saved the message, then drove home through the Charleston night, feeling like maybe, just maybe, her faith in good things was starting to come back. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more emotional and heart-touching stories that speak to the soul, and share your thoughts in the comments to tell us which story you want to hear next. Now let us continue. July arrived with the kind of heat that made Charleston feel like a sauna, and Victoria's life had shifted into something she barely recognized. In the best way possible. Christopher called when he said he would. Showed up on time for dates. Remembered details about Zoe's week that Victoria herself sometimes forgot in the chaos of managing everything. They'd settled into an easy rhythm over the past month. Coffee dates while Zoe was in summer camp. Lunch meetings that were half business, half just wanting to see each other. One perfect evening at the aquarium where Zoe had indeed seen dolphins and talked about nothing else for 3 days straight. On July 20th, 2024, a Friday evening, Victoria stood in her tiny bathroom getting ready for an actual grown-up date. Dinner at Husk, one of Charleston's nicest restaurants. Her mother had Zoe for the night, and Victoria had bought a new dress she definitely couldn't afford but looked incredible in. Her phone rang just as she was applying lipstick. Christopher's name lit up the screen. Hey, she answered, wedging the phone between her shoulder and ear. Please tell me you're not calling to cancel. Not a chance, his voice came through warm and sure. Actually, I'm outside. I know I'm early, but I finished my last meeting ahead of schedule and thought maybe we could take a walk before dinner. The reservation isn't until 7:30. Victoria glanced at the clock. 6:15. She smiled at her reflection. Give me 5 minutes. Take your time. She was ready in 3, grabbing her purse and locking up the apartment. When she stepped outside, Christopher was leaning against his car, and the look on his face when he saw her made every penny of that dress worth it. You look beautiful, he said, straightening. I mean, you always look beautiful, but tonight you look, I don't have the right words for this. Victoria laughed, feeling her cheeks warm. You clean up pretty well yourself. He was in dark slacks and a white button-down with the sleeves rolled up, and Victoria had discovered over the past month that this was her favorite version of him. Professional but relaxed, like he was letting her see the person underneath the billionaire CEO exterior. They walked toward the Battery, where the harbor breeze provided some relief from the July heat. The sun was starting its descent, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. Christopher reached for her hand, and Victoria let him take it, their fingers fitting together like they'd been doing this for years instead of weeks. I have something I want to talk to you about, Christopher said as they strolled past the historic mansions. About the foundation work. Okay, Victoria said, her photographer instincts immediately cataloging the way the light caught his profile. What's going on? The North Charleston project is moving faster than we anticipated. We're breaking ground next week, and I'd like you there to document it. But more than that, I want to offer you a contract. 6 months, guaranteed work photographing every phase of the development. Community meetings, construction progress, family move-ins. The whole story from start to finish. Victoria stopped walking. Christopher, that's a huge project. I know. And I wouldn't offer it if I didn't think you were the right person for it. Your work from the gala was exactly what I hoped for. The board was incredibly impressed. He turned to face her fully, still holding her hand. This would be significant income, and it would give you the kind of portfolio pieces that could really elevate your business. Her mind was already racing through the logistics. 6 months of steady, well-paying work. She could afford Zoe's ballet lessons, put money away for emergencies, maybe even hire an assistant to help with editing. This was the opportunity she'd been working toward for 3 years. What's the time commitment? She asked, because she needed to know if she could balance it with everything else. Flexible. That's the beauty of documentation work. You'd have deadlines for specific milestones, but day-to-day you could work around your schedule. I know you have Zoe to think about, and I want this to work for your whole life, not just your career. Victoria felt that dangerous hope again, the kind that made her want to believe in things. Then yes. Absolutely yes. Thank you for trusting me with this. Christopher's smile was radiant. Thank you for being exactly who you are. He leaned in slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away if she wanted. Victoria didn't want to. She'd been thinking about kissing him for weeks, wondering what it would feel like, and when his lips finally met hers, soft and sure and tasting faintly of the mint he'd clearly had in the car, she thought maybe all the wondering had been worth the wait. The kiss was gentle, respectful, but underneath it was heat and promise and the suggestion of more. When they pulled apart, Christopher rested his forehead against hers. I've wanted to do that since the night we met, he said quietly. Worth the wait? Victoria asked, slightly breathless. Beyond worth it. They made it to dinner, barely, and spent 3 hours talking about everything and nothing. Christopher told her about growing up in Charleston, about his complicated relationship with wealth and legacy. Victoria told him about the early days with Zoe, about building her business from scratch while learning how to be a mother at the same time. You're remarkable, Christopher said over dessert. The way you've created this whole life for yourself and Zoe. I know you probably don't hear that enough, but you should. I had help, Victoria reminded him. My mom, my friends. I didn't do it alone. But you did do it. That's what matters. The evening ended with another kiss outside her apartment, longer this time, deeper, and Victoria went to bed feeling like her life was finally coming together the way she'd always hoped it would. The problems started 3 days later. Victoria was editing photos at her kitchen table while Zoe watched cartoons when her phone rang. An unknown Charleston number. Hello? Is this Victoria Hall? A woman's voice, professional and cool. Yes, who's calling? My name is Diane Westbrook. I'm a journalist with Charleston Metro magazine. I'm doing a piece on Christopher Williams and his foundation work, and I understand you've been hired to document the North Charleston project. Victoria's stomach tightened. I'm not really able to discuss my clients or their projects without permission. Of course, I understand professional discretion. Diane's tone suggested she understood no such thing. But I'm curious about the nature of your relationship with Mr. Williams. Sources have indicated you've been seen together socially quite often over the past month. Dinners, walks, the aquarium. Is this a romantic relationship, or is he perhaps offering career advancement in exchange for other considerations? The implication hit Victoria like cold water. Excuse me? I'm just trying to get the facts straight, Ms. Hall. You're a single mother with a small photography business, and suddenly you're being given a lucrative contract by one of Charleston's wealthiest men who you also happen to be dating. You can see how that might raise questions about the appearance of impropriety. Victoria's hands were shaking. There is no impropriety. I was hired because of my work, and my personal life is none of your business. Everything is the public's business when it involves public figures and charitable foundation money, Ms. Hall. I'm going to publish this story either way. I'm giving you the courtesy of a chance to comment. I have nothing to say to you. Victoria hung up and immediately called Christopher. He answered on the second ring. Hey, I was just thinking about you. We have a problem, Victoria said, and filled him in on the conversation. There was silence on the other end, then Christopher's voice came back tight with controlled anger. I know Diane Westbrook. She's been trying to dig up dirt on my family for years. This is exactly the kind of thing she does. Christopher, she's implying that you hired me because we're sleeping together. Which we're not even doing, but that doesn't matter. If she publishes this, it could damage your foundation's reputation. And my business. People will think I slept my way into this contract. No one who matters will think that, Christopher said firmly. Your work speaks for itself. You don't know that. You don't know how people will see this. Victoria was pacing now, her mind spinning through worst-case scenarios. I have to build my reputation on my own merit. If people think I'm getting jobs because I'm dating a billionaire, I'll never be taken seriously. Victoria, breathe. We'll handle this together. But Victoria was already thinking about Zoe, about the looks her daughter might get at school if this turned into a scandal. About the whispers from other parents, the judgment from people who already thought single mothers were one step away from disaster. Maybe I should turn down the contract, she said quietly. If there's no professional relationship, there's no story. Absolutely not. Christopher's voice was sharp. Don't let her bully you into giving up an opportunity you earned. That's exactly what she wants. But if I take it, everyone will think exactly what she's implying. Then we make it clear that you were hired on merit. I'll have Margaret send over all the documentation. The selection process, the other photographers we considered, your portfolio review scores from the board. Everything that proves you were the best candidate regardless of our personal relationship. Victoria wanted to believe it would be that simple. But she'd lived long enough to know that facts rarely mattered as much as perception, especially for women, especially for black women, especially for single mothers trying to prove they belonged in rooms they hadn't been invited into. I need to think about this, she said. Victoria, please don't shut me out. We can figure this out together. I'll call you later, okay? I just need some time to process. She hung up before he could respond, then sat down at her kitchen table and put her head in her hands. Zoe wandered over, her small hand patting Victoria's arm. You okay, Mama? Victoria pulled herself together and smiled at her daughter. I'm fine, baby. Just work stuff. Nothing for you to worry about. But she was worried. Worried enough that when her mother called an hour later, Victoria spilled everything. So let me get this straight, Patricia said after listening to the whole story. This reporter is threatening to write a hit piece suggesting you're exchanging favors for career advancement, and your solution is to give up a legitimate job you earned? It's not that simple, Ma. It's exactly that simple. Baby, you cannot spend your whole life making decisions based on what other people might think or say. You're a talented photographer. You were hired because you're good at what you do. If some gossip columnist wants to twist that into something ugly, that's her problem, not yours. But what about Zoe? What if this affects her? Zoe is fine. Zoe has a mother who works hard and stands up for herself and doesn't back down when things get difficult. That's what I want her to learn from you. Not that you should make yourself smaller to avoid criticism. Victoria closed her eyes. Her mother was right. She knew her mother was right. But knowing it and feeling brave enough to act on it were two different things. Christopher texted 3 times that evening. She responded to the first one saying she was fine and needed space. Ignored the second 2. By the time she put Zoe to bed and sat down with a glass of wine she desperately needed, her phone rang again. Simone, her best friend, her voice full of concern. Your mama called me. Talk to me. Victoria talked. Simone listened. And when Victoria was finished explaining all her fears and doubts, Simone said exactly what Victoria needed to hear. You like him. Really like him. And he clearly adores you and Zoe. Don't let fear or other people's opinions ruin something good before you even give it a real chance. You deserve happiness, Vic. You deserve love. You deserve professional success. You deserve all of it, and you don't have to choose. What if it all falls apart? Then it falls apart, and you handle it like you've handled everything else life has thrown at you. But what if it doesn't? What if this is exactly what you've been working toward, both personally and professionally, and you're about to walk away from it because you're scared? Victoria sat with that question long after she and Simone said goodnight. Sat with it while she reviewed the contract Christopher had sent over weeks ago. Sat with it while she looked at the photos from the gala, from the test shots she'd already taken at the North Charleston site, and saw how good her work really was. She fell asleep on the couch, her laptop open to an email draft she'd started and deleted 4 times. An email to Christopher that she couldn't quite figure out how to write because she didn't know what she wanted to say. The next morning, July 24th, Victoria woke to 17 missed calls and twice as many text messages. The article was already online. The headline read, "Charleston's Most Eligible Bachelor's New Romance, Love or Career Advancement." And beneath it was a photo someone had taken of her and Christopher kissing outside her apartment, grainy and invasive and making something private look calculated and cheap. Victoria read the article with shaking hands. It was worse than she'd imagined. Diane Westbrook had spun their entire relationship into a transactional arrangement, implied that Victoria was using her daughter to manipulate Christopher's sympathy, suggested that the foundation contract was essentially payment for personal services. Her phone rang. "Christopher." She answered. "Victoria, I am so sorry. I'm handling this. My lawyers are already on it, and we're going to issue a statement and demand a retraction." "It doesn't matter," Victoria said, and her voice sounded hollow even to her own ears. "The damage is done. People will believe what they want to believe. Then we fight back. We show them the truth." "Christopher." Victoria closed her eyes. "I can't do this. I can't have my daughter's life splashed across gossip magazines. I can't have people questioning my professional integrity. I can't build a career on the foundation of people wondering if I slept my way into opportunities. You didn't. You don't have to defend yourself against lies. But I do. That's what you don't understand. Women like me, we always have to defend ourselves. We always have to prove we belong. And if I take this contract now, I'll never know if future clients hired me because of my work or because they think I have special access to Christopher Williams. So what are you saying?" Victoria's heart was breaking, but her mind was made up. "I'm saying I need to step back. From the contract. From this. From us. I need to protect my daughter and my business, and I can't do that if I'm in the middle of a media circus." The silence on the other end was devastating. "Victoria, please don't do this. We can figure it out together." "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I really am. But I have to do what's best for Zoe. And right now, that means walking away." She hung up before he could respond, before she could change her mind, before the tears that were already falling could turn into the kind of crying that Zoe would hear from her bedroom. By noon, she'd formally declined the foundation contract via email to Margaret, professional and brief and final. By evening, she'd blocked all the unknown numbers that had been calling her for comment. By the time she went to bed that night, she'd convinced herself she'd made the right choice. But she still cried herself to sleep, and the faith she'd just started to rebuild felt shattered all over again. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more emotional and heart-touching stories that speak to the soul, and share your thoughts in the comments to tell us which story you want to hear next. Now let us continue. August in Charleston was suffocating, but Victoria barely noticed. She moved through her days on autopilot, photographing sessions she'd booked months ago, picking up Zoe from camp, making dinner, reading bedtime stories. Going through all the motions of her life while feeling like something essential had been hollowed out. It had been 3 weeks since she'd ended things with Christopher. 3 weeks since she'd declined the foundation contract. 3 weeks of telling herself she'd made the right choice while everything inside her screamed that she'd made a terrible mistake. Christopher had tried to reach out. Texts at first, carefully worded and respectful. Then a letter delivered to her apartment, handwritten on heavy paper that she'd read once and then hidden in her desk drawer because reading it again hurt too much. He wasn't pushing, wasn't demanding. He was just there, waiting, making it clear that the door was open whenever she was ready. But Victoria didn't know if she'd ever be ready. On August 10th, a Saturday afternoon, she was at Waterfront Park again with Zoe. Her daughter was playing on the pineapple fountain with a group of other kids while Victoria sat on a bench pretending to edit photos on her tablet but mostly just staring at nothing. "You look like I feel after a 12-hour shift," a voice said. Victoria looked up to find a woman about her age, pretty with dark curls and kind eyes, standing nearby with a coffee in each hand. "That bad, huh?" Victoria managed a small smile. "I'm Nora," the woman said. "I've seen you here a few times with your daughter. The one in the pink swimsuit, right? She and my son have been building an elaborate sand castle empire over there for the past 20 minutes. Victoria looked over and saw Zoe indeed working with a little boy about her age, both of them completely absorbed in their construction project. "That's Zoe. I'm Victoria. Mind if I sit?" Nora gestured to the bench. "Fair warning, I'm a therapist, so I'm professionally nosy." But I'm also off duty and genuinely just trying to make mom friends who look as tired as I feel. Despite everything, Victoria laughed. Seat, please. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching their kids play. Then Nora said, very casually, so what's got you looking like your heart just went through a blender? Victoria glanced at her. That obvious? I specialize in trauma and grief. I know the look. Nora's voice was gentle. You don't have to talk about it. But sometimes it helps to tell a stranger who has no stake in your life and won't judge whatever messy thing you're going through. Maybe it was because Nora was a stranger. Maybe it was because Victoria had been holding everything in for 3 weeks and was about to burst. Maybe it was just because she desperately needed to talk to someone who wasn't her mother or best friend, someone who could be objective. Whatever the reason, Victoria told her everything. The whole story spilled out. Meeting Christopher, the growing connection, the article, the decision to walk away. By the time she finished, Nora was nodding slowly. Can I ask you something? Nora said. And I want you to really think about the answer. When you made the decision to end things with Christopher and turn down the contract, who were you protecting? Zoe, Victoria said immediately. And my business reputation. Okay. Let's talk about Zoe first. What specifically were you protecting her from? Victoria thought about it. The gossip. The judgment. Other parents talking about her mom in ways that might hurt her. Has any of that actually happened? Well, no. But it could. It could, Nora agreed. Kids can be cruel, and so can adults. But Victoria, kids are also resilient. And from what you've told me, Zoe is loved, secure, and has a mother who would walk through fire for her. A little gossip, even if it did happen, wouldn't change that foundation you've built for her. Victoria felt her throat tighten. I just wanted to protect her. I know. And that instinct comes from a good place. But sometimes we protect our kids from the wrong things. Sometimes we teach them to hide and be small and avoid anything that might invite criticism instead of teaching them to stand tall and weather storms. Nora paused. What would you want Zoe to learn from this situation? That she should give up things that make her happy because someone might judge her? Or that she should stand firm in her truth regardless of what other people think? The words hit Victoria like a physical blow. She'd been so focused on protecting Zoe that she hadn't thought about what lesson she was actually teaching her. And your business, Nora continued. You said you were worried about your reputation. But didn't you say Christopher's team offered to provide all the documentation proving you were hired on merit? Yes, but people will still think what they want to think. That's true. People always will. But the people who matter, the clients who will actually hire you, don't they care more about the quality of your work than gossip column speculation? Nora leaned forward slightly. I'm not trying to tell you what to do. This is your life, your choice. But from the outside looking in, it seems like you're not protecting yourself from real threats. You're protecting yourself from possibility. From happiness. From the risk of things going wrong. Victoria felt tears building. What if I let myself be happy and it all falls apart anyway? Then it falls apart, and you survive it. Just like you've survived everything else. Nora's voice was impossibly gentle. But what if it doesn't fall apart? What if you're walking away from something real because you're too scared to believe you deserve it? The tears spilled over then, and Victoria didn't try to stop them. Nora pulled a pack of tissues from her bag without comment and handed them over. I really care about him, Victoria whispered. More than I've cared about anyone in years. And it terrifies me. Of course it does. Caring about people is terrifying. They can hurt you, disappoint you, leave. But they can also love you, support you, stay. And you don't get the second possibility without risking the first. They sat quietly while Victoria cried and Zoe played, oblivious to her mother's breakdown 30 feet away. When Victoria finally pulled herself together, Nora squeezed her shoulder. Whatever you decide, make sure it's actually what you want. Not what you think you should do, not what feels safest, but what you genuinely want for your life. That night, after Zoe was asleep, Victoria pulled out Christopher's letter and read it again. His handwriting was neat and precise, just like him. The letter was 2 pages, and every word felt like it had been carefully chosen. He didn't try to convince her she'd made the wrong choice. He didn't argue or defend himself. He simply told her that he understood her fears, respected her decision, and would wait as long as she needed. That the foundation contract was still hers if she wanted it, with every piece of documentation proving merit-based hiring ready to be made public. That he missed her and Zoe. That he'd never felt about anyone the way he felt about her. The last line destroyed her. I don't know if you believe in second chances, but if you ever want one, I'm here. However long it takes. Victoria set the letter down and opened her laptop. She went to Charleston Metro Magazine's website, something she'd been avoiding for 3 weeks. The article was still there, but the comment section had been disabled, and there was an editor's note at the top. Update: following legal review, Charleston Metro Magazine retracts statements made in this article suggesting impropriety in the hiring practices of Williams Foundation. Documentation has confirmed that Ms. Victoria Hall was selected through a merit-based review process. We regret the error and any harm caused to Ms. Hall's professional reputation. Victoria stared at the retraction. Christopher had done exactly what he said he would. Fought for her reputation even after she'd walked away. Protected her even when she'd refused to let him. She opened her email and found the message Margaret had sent 3 weeks ago with all the hiring documentation attached. Performance reviews from the board members who'd reviewed her portfolio. Comparison sheets with the other photographers they'd considered. Score breakdowns showing Victoria had been the unanimous first choice before Christopher had ever taken her to dinner. Everything she'd needed to prove she'd earned the opportunity on her own merit. And she'd been too scared and hurt to even look at it. Victoria thought about what Nora had said. About what she was teaching Zoe. About protecting herself from possibility instead of actual threats. About what she genuinely wanted instead of what felt safest. She wanted Christopher. Wanted the way he listened to her, the way he made her laugh, the way he looked at Zoe like she was the most fascinating person in the world. Wanted the partnership they'd been building before fear had made her run. But wanting wasn't enough. She needed to be brave enough to reach for it. The next morning, Sunday, August 11th, Victoria called her mother. "I need you to watch Zoe today. I have something I need to do." Patricia's response was immediate. "It's about time. Bring her over whenever you're ready." Victoria dropped Zoe off within the hour, then sat in her car outside her mother's house, gathering courage. She pulled out her phone and stared at Christopher's name in her contacts. Her thumb hovered over the call button for a long moment before she pressed it. He answered on the second ring. Victoria. Just her name, but she could hear everything in it. Hope, wariness, longing. "Hi," she said, her voice barely steady. "Do you have time to talk today? In person?" "Yes. Absolutely. When and where?" "The place where we had our first real conversation. The diner. Can you meet me there in an hour?" "I'll be there." Victoria drove to the diner with her heart pounding. She arrived 15 minutes early and sat in the same booth they'd shared after the gala, when everything had been new and possible and she hadn't yet learned to be afraid of it. Christopher walked in exactly on time. He looked thinner, she thought, and tired in that deep way she recognized from her own mirror. But when his eyes found hers, they lit up with something that made her chest ache. He slid into the booth across from her, and they sat in silence for a moment. The waitress appeared, poured coffee, and disappeared again with the efficiency of someone who'd seen every kind of human interaction possible and knew when to give people space. "Thank you for calling," Christopher said finally. "I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't sure I would either," Victoria admitted. "But I've been doing a lot of thinking over the past few weeks. About what I want. About what I'm teaching Zoe. About whether I'm actually protecting us or just hiding." Christopher's hands were wrapped around his coffee mug, and she could see the tension in his shoulders. Waiting for whatever she was about to say. "I saw the retraction," Victoria continued. "And I looked at all the documentation Margaret sent. You were right. About all of it. I was hired because I'm good at what I do, and I let fear convince me otherwise. You were scared. That's understandable. It is. But it's not an excuse for hurting you. For walking away without even trying to fight for what we had." Victoria took a breath. "Christopher, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't trust you, or us, or myself enough to believe we could get through it together." He reached across the table and took her hand. His palm was warm, and his thumb brushed across her knuckles the same way it had that first night. "I'm sorry you were put in that position at all. I should have anticipated that kind of scrutiny and prepared you better. We can't predict everything. And we can't control what other people say or think." Victoria squeezed his hand. "But we can decide what we do about it. And I want to try again. If you're still interested. I want to take the contract, and I want to date you, and I want to see where this goes without running away the first time it gets hard." Christopher's smile was slow and devastating. "I'm very interested. I've been interested since the moment you walked into my office and looked at me like you could see right through all the walls I've built. I want you to know something," Victoria said. "Zoe comes first. Always. That's not going to change. I wouldn't want it to change. I care about both of you. As a package deal, remember? And my business matters to me. I need to build something that's mine, that I can be proud of regardless of who I'm dating. I know. And I'll support that however I can without overshadowing what you're building." Victoria felt tears threatening again, but these were different. These were relief and hope and the overwhelming feeling of coming home to something she hadn't known she'd been looking for. "So we try again," she said. For real this time. No running, no hiding. We deal with whatever comes together. Together, Christopher agreed. That sounds perfect. He stood and moved to her side of the booth, sliding in next to her. When he kissed her, it felt like a promise and a beginning all at once. Like everything they'd been through over the past month had just been preparation for this moment, this choice to be brave enough to reach for happiness even when it scared her. When they pulled apart, Victoria rested her head on his shoulder. I missed you. So much. I missed you too. Both of you. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. Can we pick up Zoe? I've been practicing my dolphin facts, and I have at least 15 new ones to share. Victoria laughed, and it felt like breathing after being underwater too long. She's going to be so excited. Fair warning, though, she's going to want to know where you've been. I'll tell her the truth. That her mom and I had some things to figure out, but we figured them out, and I'm not going anywhere. You're not going anywhere, Victoria repeated, testing the words. Believing them. Not a chance, Christopher said. You're stuck with me now. And for the first time in 3 weeks, Victoria let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she deserved exactly this. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more emotional and heart-touching stories that speak to the soul, and share your thoughts in the comments to tell us which story you want to hear next. Now let us continue. The groundbreaking ceremony for the North Charleston housing development took place on a perfect October morning. October 15, 2024, to be exact, and the air had finally lost that oppressive summer humidity, replaced by the kind of crisp autumn weather that made Charleston feel magical. Victoria stood behind her camera, capturing moments she knew would matter. Community leaders turning over ceremonial shovelfuls of earth. Children from the neighborhood holding signs their teachers had helped them make. Families who would eventually live in these homes, their faces full of hope and possibility. And Christopher, in the center of it all, speaking with quiet passion about his father's vision and the future they were building together. Over the past 2 months, since that conversation in the diner, Victoria's life had transformed in ways she was still processing. The foundation contract had given her financial stability she'd never experienced. She'd hired an assistant, a recent college graduate named Maya who was eager and talented. She'd enrolled Zoe in ballet lessons and watched her daughter flourish. She'd even started looking at larger apartments, places with enough room for a proper home office and maybe a second bedroom. And Christopher had been there through all of it, steady and supportive without being overwhelming. He'd learned Zoe's schedule, showed up to her first ballet recital with flowers, had dinner with Victoria's mother at least twice a month. He'd integrated himself into their lives so seamlessly that sometimes Victoria forgot there had ever been a time without him. The ceremony concluded, and people began mingling. Victoria continued photographing, catching candid moments of celebration and community. She was reviewing a particularly good shot when she felt Christopher's presence beside her. "How's it looking?" he asked. "Beautiful. This is going to be an incredible series." She showed him the screen. "Look at this one. The little girl in the yellow dress, the way she's looking at the empty lot like she can already see the home that's going to be there." Christopher studied the image, and something shifted in his expression. "You have this gift for seeing the best in people. In situations. You find the hope in everything." "Not everything," Victoria said, thinking about how close she'd come to walking away from all of this. "But I'm learning. We both are." The cleanup and final photographs took another hour. By the time Victoria was packing her equipment, most people had dispersed. Christopher was talking with the construction foreman, going over timelines and details, and Victoria found herself just watching him. The way he listened with complete attention. The way he treated everyone with the same respect regardless of their position. The way he cared so deeply about doing things right. She was in love with him. Had been for weeks, maybe months. But she hadn't said it yet, too scared of making herself that vulnerable. But watching him now, seeing the man he was when he thought no one was paying attention, she felt the words building in her chest. Christopher finished his conversation and walked over, loosening his tie. "All done? All done. This was wonderful, Christopher. Really. You should be proud. We should be proud. This doesn't happen without your documentation. The board wants to use your photos for the annual report, by the way. And possibly a fundraising campaign." Victoria's eyes widened. "Seriously? Seriously? Your work tells the story better than anything I could say in 100 speeches." He paused. "Are you free tonight? I know it's last minute, but I'd like to take you somewhere. Zoe has a sleepover at my mom's. So I'm completely free." "Perfect. I'll pick you up at 7. He wouldn't tell her where they were going, just said to dress comfortably. When he arrived at 7 exactly, he was in jeans and a sweater, more casual than she usually saw him during the week. They drove out of the city, heading north along the coast. Victoria watched the landscape change from urban to rural, marshland stretching out on either side of the road. "Are you kidnapping me?" she asked, only half joking. Christopher laughed. "Not quite. Just sharing something I don't show many people." 20 minutes later, they pulled up to a small beach house. It was charming in an understated way, weathered wood and a wide porch facing the ocean. The sun was setting, painting everything in shades of orange and pink. "This is my father's house," Christopher said as they got out of the car. "He bought it years ago, said everyone needed a place where they could hear themselves think. I've kept it exactly as he left it." Victoria followed him inside. The house was small but beautiful, filled with comfortable furniture and photographs on every surface. Christopher and his father at various ages. His mother, who'd passed when he was in college. Family moments frozen in time. "It's lovely," Victoria said softly. "Come on. I want to show you the best part." He led her out to the porch, where 2 chairs faced the ocean. The sunset was in full glory now, the sky on fire with color. They sat, and for a while neither of them spoke, just watched the waves and the changing light. "I come here when I need to remember why I'm doing what I'm doing," Christopher said eventually. "When the business feels like too much, or I'm not sure I'm making the right choices. I sit here and I think about what my father would say. What would he say about all this? The foundation, the housing development. I think he'd say I was finally getting it right." Christopher turned to look at her. "And I think he'd really like you. He always said the measure of a person wasn't what they had, but what they did with it. You've built something beautiful with far less resources than most people ever get." That would have impressed him. Victoria's throat felt tight. "I wish I could have met him." "Me too." Christopher reached over and took her hand. "Victoria, there's something I need to tell you. Something I've been thinking about for a while now." Her heart started beating faster. "Okay. These past few months with you and Zoe, they've been the happiest I've been in years. Maybe ever. You've brought something into my life I didn't even know I was missing. Joy. Real connection. A reason to leave the office at a reasonable hour because I know you're waiting." He squeezed her hand. "I love you. I'm in love with you. And I needed you to know that." The words she'd been holding back tumbled out. "I love you too. I've been so scared to say it, but I do. I love you so much it terrifies me sometimes." Christopher pulled her close and kissed her, deep and sure and full of promise. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "Don't be terrified. We're doing this together, remember?" "Together," Victoria agreed. "I like the sound of that." They stayed on the porch until the sun disappeared completely, talking about everything and nothing. Christopher told her about his plans for the foundation's next project. Victoria told him about a new client she was excited about, a gallery owner who wanted to commission a series on Charleston's historic black churches. "I'm thinking about expanding the business," she said. "Maybe bringing on a partner eventually. Someone who could handle the commercial work while I focus on the documentary and artistic projects." "That sounds amazing. You should absolutely do it. It's scary though. Growing means risk." Christopher smiled. "Everything worth having involves risk. But you're not doing it alone this time." They drove back to Charleston late, and Christopher walked her to her apartment door. Before she could unlock it, he pulled her close again. "I know it's still early in a lot of ways," he said. "But I want you to know that I'm serious about this. About us. About building a future together. I'm not going anywhere, Victoria." "Neither am I," she promised. "Not anymore." The weeks that followed were filled with work and family and the quiet building of something lasting. Thanksgiving came, and Christopher joined them at Patricia's house, enduring her good-natured interrogation with grace and humor. Zoe's ballet recital in early December had Christopher sitting in the front row next to Victoria, both of them filming on their phones like proud parents. On December 20th, Christopher took Victoria and Zoe to see the first families moving into the North Charleston development. Victoria photographed everything while Zoe handed out cookies she'd helped Patricia bake. Watching children run through new homes, seeing parents holding keys with tears in their eyes, Victoria understood why this work mattered so much to Christopher. That evening, after they'd dropped Zoe at home and were sitting in Christopher's car outside her apartment, he turned to her with unusual nervousness. "I have something for you," he said. "An early Christmas present. But I need to explain it first." "Okay," Victoria said, curious. "You mentioned wanting to expand your business. And I know you've been looking at larger apartments." He took a breath. "There's a building downtown, on King Street. Mixed use, commercial space on the ground floor, residential above. One of the commercial units would be perfect for a photography studio. Proper space, good light, room for equipment and an editing suite." Victoria's eyes widened. "Christopher, those spaces cost a fortune." "I know. Which is why I'd like to invest in your business. Not as your boyfriend, but as someone who believes in what you're building. A proper business investment with contracts and terms and everything above board. You'd have full creative control, I'd just be a silent partner helping with the capital you need to grow. That's too much, Victoria said automatically. Is it? Or is it exactly what you need to take your business to the next level? Christopher's voice was gentle. I'm not trying to rescue you or control anything. I'm offering to invest in something I believe in. You'd pay me back with interest over time, just like any business loan. But it would give you the space and resources to really build what you're capable of. Victoria thought about what Nora had said months ago. About accepting help, about not making herself smaller to avoid criticism. About teaching Zoe to stand tall and reach for opportunities. Can I think about it? She asked. Of course. Take all the time you need. And if you decide it's not right, that's okay too. We're still us regardless. But over the next week, Victoria did think about it. She looked at the building, the space, the possibilities. She talked to her mother, to Simone, even to Nora who she'd kept in touch with. She ran the numbers with Maya, created business plans, researched what it would take to really expand. And on December 28th, she called Christopher and said yes. They signed the papers in January, proper legal documents that made it clear this was business, not charity. Victoria moved into the new studio space in February, and by March she'd brought on a second photographer as a partner. Her business grew exponentially, and so did her reputation. By April, she had a waiting list 3 months long. Through it all, Christopher was there but not hovering. Supporting but not controlling. Celebrating her successes without trying to take credit for them. On a warm evening in late April, almost a year since they'd first met, Christopher took Victoria back to Waterfront Park. They walked along the Battery, watching the sun set over the harbor, Zoe running ahead of them chasing seagulls. I love watching you with her, Victoria said. You're so good with her. She's easy to love. Just like her mother. Christopher stopped walking. Victoria, can you call Zoe back for a minute? There's something I want to ask you both. Curious, Victoria called her daughter over. Zoe came running, slightly out of breath and grinning. What's up? Christopher knelt down so he was at Zoe's eye level. Zoe, I wanted to ask you something important. I love your mom very much and I love you too. And I was wondering how you'd feel if I asked your mom to marry me. Zoe's eyes went huge. Like be married? Like forever? Like forever, Christopher confirmed. Would you live with us? If your mom says yes, and if you're okay with it, then yes. We'd be a family. Zoe looked at Victoria, then back at Christopher, processing this with the seriousness only a 6-year-old could manage. Would I still get to have sleepovers at Grandma's? Christopher smiled. Absolutely. And you'd come to my ballet stuff? Every single recital. Okay then. You can ask her. Christopher stood and turned to Victoria, who had tears streaming down her face. He pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it to reveal a beautiful vintage ring, simple and elegant. Victoria Hall, you've changed my entire life. You've taught me about courage, about love, about what really matters. You and Zoe are my family, my home, my everything. Will you marry me? Victoria didn't trust her voice, so she just nodded, then managed to whisper, yes. Yes, absolutely yes. Christopher slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her while Zoe cheered and several nearby tourists applauded. When they broke apart, Victoria was laughing and crying at the same time. I can't believe you asked Zoe first, she said. She's part of this decision too. I wanted her to know she matters. Christopher pulled them both into a hug. I love you both so much. We love you too, Victoria said, and Zoe nodded enthusiastically against Christopher's side. They were married in October, exactly 1 year after the groundbreaking ceremony where Victoria had realized she was in love. It was a small ceremony at Christopher's beach house, just family and close friends. Zoe was the flower girl, serious and focused in her role. Patricia cried through the entire ceremony. And when Christopher and Victoria exchanged vows they'd written themselves, there wasn't a dry eye present. You taught me to have faith again, Victoria said, holding his hands. In love, in possibility, in the future. You showed me that accepting help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. That being vulnerable isn't dangerous, it's brave. I promise to spend the rest of my life loving you, supporting you, and building something beautiful with you. You showed me what really matters, Christopher said. Not success or money or legacy, but connection. Love. Family. You and Zoe gave me a home I didn't even know I was looking for. I promise to spend the rest of my life making you feel treasured, supported, and loved beyond measure. The reception was on the beach, casual and joyful. As the sun set and their guests danced on the sand, Victoria stood with her new husband watching Zoe twirl with her grandmother, and felt overwhelmed by how much her life had changed. Happy? Christopher asked, pulling her close. Beyond happy. I keep thinking about that day in your office, how terrified I was. How sure I was that I didn't belong in your world. You created your own world. I just get to be part of it now. We created it together, Victoria corrected. That's what partnership means. 6 months later, Victoria's photography series on the North Charleston housing development won a regional award. A year after that, she opened a second studio location. And 2 years after their wedding, when she told Christopher she was pregnant and watched his face light up with pure joy, she thought about how close she'd come to walking away from all of this. But she hadn't. She'd been brave enough to have faith, to take risks, to believe she deserved happiness. And every single day since had proven that leap of faith had been worth it. On a quiet Sunday morning, with Christopher making pancakes in the kitchen of the home they'd bought together, with Zoe practicing her ballet in the living room, with her hand resting on her growing belly, Victoria pulled out her camera and captured the moment. Not for a client or a project, but for herself. Evidence of the beautiful life she'd built, the family she'd found, the faith she'd reclaimed. And when she looked at the image later, she saw exactly what she always tried to capture in her work. Real moments. Genuine connection. The kind of love that made you believe in forever. She'd lost faith once as a single mom struggling to survive. But Christopher Williams had turned her broken heart into his forever home, and together they'd created something more beautiful than either of them could have imagined. A life built on love, partnership, and the courage to keep believing in second chances. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more emotional and heart-touching stories that speak to the soul, and share your thoughts in the comments to tell us which story you want to hear next.